Sechus Kiddushin Daf Samach contains two Mishnayos, one about halfway through and one all the way near the end of the Daf. All the Sigis are discussing a situation where somebody did Kiddushin with a Tanai and what the rules of that Tanai are and what the person meant. So the Gemara begins in the middle of discussing the opinion of Rav. Rav held that if somebody says Mehayoim or Me'achshav L'achar Shloshim Yom, he says to a woman, I want to be Mekadesh you from today after 30 days. It's a suffix what he means. Did he mean from today, you know what, I changed my mind, after 30 days, and therefore he only wants a Kiddushin to B'chal after 30 days, nothing to do with today? Or did he mean to say, I want a Kiddushin to B'chal today on the condition that I still hold that way in 30 days, which means that it's a Tanai, and when 30 days pass, the Tanai is fulfilled, and the Kiddushin is Chal retroactively from the moment he said it. So the Gemara says that Abaye said that according to this opinion of Rav, that it's a suffix, which one he means, what happens if you have three people who do the same thing, but each in a shorter time span? So Reuven says from today after 30 days, then afterwards along comes Shimon and says from today after 20 days, and then along comes Levi and says from today after 10 days. So Reuven's speech was first, Shimon's was second, and Levi's was third, but the time of Chalais was in reverse order. Reuven's was last, Shimon's was the middle, and Levi was the earliest. So we have a suffix, which one is which? Says Abaye, only the first person and the third person are in the suffix. Because if he was saying Me'asha from now, so then the first person was first. His Kiddushin takes place first. And then for his one, it's Chal, the second and the third are not. If it was a retraction, and he means to say after the last times, then only the last person, only Levi's Kiddushin is Chal, because he's the one who said after 10 days that happens first. Either way, Shimon is out. So therefore, Abaye says, for this, she would only require a get from Reuven and from Levi, not from Shimon, because he's not involved in the suffix. So Gemara asks Pshita, that's obvious. You're just doing the math for me. What I think otherwise. So the Gemara explains, no, you would think that perhaps what Rav meant was that each person could mean it whichever way they want, and we don't know. There isn't any general rule. It's not that we have a suffix. It could mean either way, and we don't know what each person meant. So it's possible that Reuven meant after 30 days and not now, and therefore his Kiddushin wasn't Chal right away. But Levi meant from now. And Shimon also meant from now. And therefore Shimon was before Levi, and therefore Shimon is the one that's really Chal. And therefore you should need to get from his as well. Kavashma, that's not the suffix. The suffix is not what they mean. The suffix is what do the words mean, and whatever they mean, it has to be the same for everybody. All right, now the Gemara quotes Ula, who says the name of Rav Yechanan, that he argues on this halach of Abaye, and he says even if you have 100 people who did the same thing, she needs to get from all of them. And he doesn't phrase it as she needs to get from all of them, but all 100 are teifes. They all take hold. That implies that it's not a suffix at all. That implies that they all really have some chalais. So the Gemara asks, what would be the logic in that? So the Gemara answers that Rav Yechanan views it as if somebody's building a brick wall. Each brick is a little bit off from being directly on top of the brick before. It's a little off center. So each person who leaves a bit of space for the next person for his Kiddushin to be typhus in her, and therefore all of them have a tfisa. The Gemara now continues and asks the kasha on Rav Yechanan from a brisa and gives an answer. So the Gemara asks, we have a brisa that says that if a man gives a woman a get, not Kiddushin, a get, and he says the same expression, Mehayoim l'achar misa, so it's a suffix get, we don't know if it's valid or not, and the halacha is because we don't know if it's valid, if he dies and she falls even to his brother, she requires chalitza because possibly it was not a good get and she has a zikas yibam. He can't do the yibam though because it could be that it was a good get and she's now his brother's divorcee, his grushas achav, which is also for him to be with or to marry at all. Therefore, she requires chalitza and can't do yibam. So now how do you understand this? So according to Rav, who says that this expression is a suffix, this is perfect. And certainly is a suffix whether or not the get is valid, because on the tzad that he meant it as a tanai, it's l'achar misa, and then it's no good. If he meant it right away, then it is good. Therefore, it's a suffix, and that's exactly what the brisa says. Now, according to Shmuel, who we've seen earlier, holds that is certainly a tanai, so this would not be a get at all. However, this is not a kasha on Shmuel, because Shmuel will say that this is the opinion of the Rabbanon, and Shmuel holds like Rabbi, as we've seen in the brisa before, the Rabbanon have a suffix, and Rabbi holds that it is a vade. Now, the problem is Rav Yechanan. Rav Yechanan said that this is a partial. This expression means a partial. He's leaving over, like the brick wall. If it's a partial and is leaving over, the get should be invalid because a partial get is no get at all. A get has to be complete, has to be krisos. So this should be completely invalid. Why is there any tzad that it is a valid get? Why should she require chalitza? She should be able to do yibum because she's not divorced at all and she falls to yibum. So the Gemara answers, you're right. However, we're afraid we're going to confuse this case with another case. Therefore, we make a gzeira and we require chalitza because in that case, you can't do yibum. What's that case? That's if he says a much clearer expression where he says, mehayim im mesi. This get should take effect today if I die. So there he's clearly saying it should be from today. And therefore, the get is clearly chal and she's divorced and she can't do yibum. Now, so that's why we require a chalitza here as well. So the Gemara asks, so in that case, why don't we make a gzeira in reverse? Why don't we say that in the case of Mehayimim Mesi, where she could do Yibum, we should say that she should have to do Chalitza. Because if we allow her to do Yibum there, come to do Yibum in our case it's a suffix and you can't. So the Gemara says, we can't let her do Chalitza there, because if she do Chalitza, people will think if I can do Chalitza, I can do Yibum. Some will end up doing Yibum, and Yibum there is completely forbidden because she's certainly divorced. So the Gemara says, so say the same thing here in our case. Why do we say that she can do Chalitza and not Yibum? If you allow her to do Chalitza, she'll do Yibum. So Gemara says that's not a kasha. In our case, even if she does yibum, what's she violating? She's violating a gzeira derabanan and a chashash atu the case of mehayim im mesi. But in her case herself, she can do yibum. It's not a problem because the get is completely invalid according to Rav Yechonah, and therefore we allow it. We allow chalitza. Now we get our next Mishnah, which lists a number of other conditions or tanaim in a condition which a man might make. An example is what the halacha is. So first, if a man says to a woman, you are mekudeshes to me on the condition that I give you 200 zuz, so he has to fulfill the condition if he wants a condition to be chal. If she is mekudeshes, and he has to give her the 200 zuz. Otherwise, it's invalid. So the tanai works. If he says on the condition that I give you 200 zuz within the next 30 days, if he gives her within 30 days, it's chal the Kiddushin, and if not, not. If he says almanas that I have 200 zuz, again, the Kiddushin is chal if he has 200 zuz. Now, if he says on the condition that I show you 200 zuz, he has to show her 200 of his own zuz. If he's a money changer and he shows her 200 zuz on the table, that doesn't count because he most certainly meant his own money. Okay, and we now begin the Gemara, which introduces the machlekes of Huna and of Yehuda. When he's mekayim the tanai, when he gives the 200 zuz, the Kiddushin takes effect at that time, or takes effect from the time that he gave her the original Kiddushin and made the Tanai. So the way the Machlokes is phrased is very similar. It's hard to see at first the difference between the two opinions. Rav Huna says that the Kiddushin is Chal Vihu Yitain. He should give it and it's Chal. Rav Yehuda says it's Chal when he gives it. And Gemara explains that the difference is, according to Rav Huna, it's Chal right away. And it's chal limafreya, that is, it's chal retroactively from when he gives the 200 zuz. So v'hu yitain, when he wants it to be chal, he will give it, and then it takes effect to what happened before. He says l'chish yitain, when he will give it, then it'll take effect at that moment. It won't take effect retroactively from the original Kiddushin. Says Gemara, what's the nafkamina between the two opinions? Nafkamina is if she accepts good Kiddushin from someone else in between, when she got the original Kiddushin, when the time was fulfilled, went into Rav Huna that the Kiddushin is chal retroactively, the second Kiddushin is not chal, and therefore she's married to the first man. Went to Rav Yehuda that it's only chal when he fulfills the Tanai. Here it's too late because she already took Kiddushin from someone else, and she's married to the second man and not to the first man. Says Gemara, you find the same discussion, same machlokes, Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda in the situation of giving a get al tanai, and not only Kiddushin al tanai, and there we're going to have to give a different nafkamina. So the Gemara quotes that machlokes, again, the same case. Someone gives his wife a get and says, here is your get, and it should be chal on the condition that this time she has to give it, that she gives him 200 zuz. So again, it's chal. And the same machlokes, Rav Huna says she gives it. Rav Yehuda says when she gives it. And again, Rav Huna is holding that it's chal retroactively, and Rav Yehuda is saying it's only chal from when she actually goes ahead and she fulfills the tanai. Now, the Gemara says, what is the difference between the two. Here you can't say the difference is if she's Makabel Kiddushin in between, because it's certainly a suffix whether she'll ever get divorced or not. It's a suffix whether she's ever going to give it. So she's not divorced at that time. So the second Kiddushin is totally invalid. The nafkamina, the Gemara says, is if the get was destroyed or lost at the time that the Tanai is fulfilled. According to Rav Huna, that it's retroactive, it doesn't have to be there. According to Rav Yehuda, it's taking effect at that moment, the get still has to be around. Now, the Gemara says, why do they have to say this machlokes both in case of Gittin and the case of Kiddushin? The Gemara says, I need each one, otherwise I would not have known it. If you only would have said the case of Kiddushin, where he is drawing her near, so there you may think that it's more obvious to say Rav Huna's opinion, and therefore maybe only there Rav Huna says his opinion that he wants it to be retroactive because he wants it to happen faster. But a divorce, no one's in a rush to do, so maybe he would agree to Rav Yehuda that he intends it to happen later. And if we would only said it in the case of the divorce, so then you would think over there, you would have Rav Yehuda saying his opinion because she is not troubled to claim the money from him. They're divorced afterwards, and therefore she'll go ahead and claim it, and therefore she has a smichas and she accepts the get and she agrees to it, even though it's only going to be chal later. However, in the case of Kiddushin, she's going to be embarrassed to try to collect it, so maybe she's not going to have a smichas hadas unless it is right away. The Gemara now has two kashas on Rav Yehuda. First kasha is, we have a brisa that says, man gives a woman, exactly our case, he gives her a get, and he says, here's your get on the condition that you give me 200 zuz. Even though the get is torn or lost at the time that she gives it to him, the divorce is chal and it's valid. However, she can't get married in the meantime because you don't know if it's actually going to happen, if she actually will end up giving the zuz or not. Therefore, you clearly see that the Kiddushin is limafreya. It takes place retroactively because it works even though the get was destroyed by the time the 200 zuz are handed over. Second Baisa says, he says to her, here is your get on the condition that you'll give me 200 zuz. Same case. And this time, he dies. So if she had already given him the 200 zuz, she's fine, she's divorced, and she doesn't fall to Yibum. If, however, she didn't give it to him, and now she wants to give it to him, so now you have a machlekes between Rosh and Gamliel on the Tanakama. Did he mean you could give it to me or to my inheritors? According to the Tanakama, it's too late. According to Rosh and Gamliel, you could give it to the inheritors and it still works. However, obviously, everyone agrees that had he meant you could give it to my inheritors, that it would work. So therefore, everyone agrees that it works even though he died already, which means that it's taking place lima freya retroactively from the time that he gave her the get and made that condition. Both are clearly against Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda answers, it's actually Machlekes Tanayim. This is Rabbi's opinion, who holds, and whenever anybody makes a Tanai, he means retroactive, what we call Kol HaEmer Almanas K'Emer Me'achshav Dami. I hold like the Rabbanan, who disagree and hold that there is no Kol HaEmer Almanas K'Emer Me'achshav Dami. Now, having mentioned that Machlekes Rabbi and the Rabbanan, the Gemara brings some discussion as to what was the correct version of this machlekes. So the Gemara brings that Rav Huna has our version that we said from Rabbi Yehuda, that Rabbi says that anytime someone says amenas, it's as retroactive, it's me'achshav, and the Chachamim disagree and say no, it's not retroactive, it's not me'achshav. But he says when I got that Reb Zera says that that's how I thought it was when I was in Bavel. Then, however, when I got to Eretz Yisrael, I heard Rav Asi who was saying, in the name of Rav Yechanan, that it's not the correct version, and perhaps he was even quoting Rav Huna on that as well, but he was saying that the entire machlokes is where he says Mehayoim, which is much more likely to be retroactive. He says, here's your get from today, Almanas, that the following thing happens, that you give me 200 zuz or whatever the Tanai was. So there is the case where there's a machlokes whether or not it's retroactive or it's at the time that it happens. However, if he just says Almanas, everyone agree that it happens later and it does not happen at the that he gave the get in the first place. Says the Gemara, so we just quoted Rabbi Yehuda says that the machlokes is in the regular case of Almanas, not in the case of Mehayim. So why don't you say in the case of Mehayim? So the Gemara says no. Rabbi Yehuda holds we wanted to show in the case of Almanas to show that even there, Rabbi goes so far as to say that it is retroactive. Says the Gemara, why don't you say so far as the Rabbanan say even in the case of Mehayim that it's not retroactive? So the Gemara says no. Adif. Rabbi's being the matir, and therefore we're allowing. And it's more of a chiddush to say that. The Gemara now refers back to the Mishnah and analyzes some of the cases which we had. First of all, we had where the condition is that he has to give her 200 zuz within 30 days. So we said that the halacha is that if he fulfills it and he gives it within 30 days, the Kiddushin is chal, if not. So the Gemara says, what's a Kiddush? Obviously, that's what he said. The Gemara said, no, you may think that he was just being mizaris, he was just encouraging himself, or she was encouraging him to do it quickly, but they weren't actually makbet on the 30 days. No, that's what he said. That's what he meant. It has to be within 30 days. Next case, we said that if he says, I have 200 zuz, the Tanai is that he has 200 zuz. So it says v'yeshlai, that he has to have it. The Gemara understands that means that he has to bring Eidim, which proves that he has it. So Gemara says, why? Even if he doesn't bring Eidim, you should still be concerned maybe he really has it, and the Kiddushin is chal. Gemara says, yes, you're right, it would be a Kiddushin Safek. When we say that he has to have it, we're talking about having a Kiddushin Vadei. To have a Vadei Kiddushin, you have to bring Kiddushin, you have to bring a proof that he actually has it. Next, we saw that if he's showing her money, he has to show her his. He can't show her money that he has on the table as he's a money changer. So Gemara says because she meant to see his. That's what she meant when she agreed to that. And as far as the halacha, that if he shows her money that he just had on the table, the Gemara says that's not a chiddush. The Gemara explains the chiddush is that even if the money was invested with him, it was given to him to make money off it, but since it's not really his money, that doesn't count. And now again, our next Mishnah, which is very similar, discusses more Tanaim, and that they have to be kept. So the first one is if he gives her a Kiddushin Amanas that I have a base core. Rashi explains how large a base core is. It is a field which is big enough to plant 30 saw of grain. And Rashi gives us the measurements and the derivation. So if he says I have to, it's on the condition that I have the base core of a field of dirt, then if he has it, then the Kiddushin is chal. Next Tanai is if he says on the condition that I have a base core in such and such place, then he has to have it in that place. And again, if not, it's not chal. The last one is if he says that I'm going to show you the base core, again, he has to show her his base core. He can't just show her a valley full of fields. The Gemara focuses on the case where we say he has to have it, where he made a condition that I have the base core. He has to actually have it. Again, the Gemara says, why does he have to prove that he has it? Maybe we should be concerned that he has it, even if we don't have any proof. The answer is yes, it's Kiddushin Safek. If he doesn't prove it, when we say that he has to prove he has it, we mean in order to make the Kiddushin Vadai. So Gemara says, why do you have to tell me there's both in the case of money that he promised and in the case of a field that he promised? So Gemara says it was a big Chiddush that in the case of the field, it's a Kiddushin Safek, even if there's no proof. Fields are hard to hide. Money could be that it is common for a man to hide the cash that he has, so therefore it's more logical for us to be concerned that maybe he has it and give the Kiddushin a suffix status of validity. However, in the case of a field, I think you're not going to do that. Kamashman that we could be hiding it, even though it's not cash. Next thing, what's a chiddush that if the condition was that the field has to be in a certain place, that it actually has to be there. Mar says the chiddush is that he may say to her, "Listen, I make you a deal. You want it to be easy access for you. I'll bring it to you. It's not relevant where the field is. I'll do the work to make sure that that it is accessible to you as if the field was here." No, you can't assume that, and therefore that's not a valid fulfillment of the Tanai unless it's where he said. And again, the last case is where he said he will show her the field. Again, she means to be shown his field, and he can't just show her a field. Umar says, then what is the chiddush if he just shows her a random valley fields that it's no good? So Umar says, no, we mean a field that he's an aris on. He does have some chelik of that. He will collect some of those crops. You may think that that's valid. Kamashma, no, it has to be a field that he owns outright.